In the opening scene, a boy named Tim narrates how his family was always happy, and his father always had time for everything. He describes his love for his sister Catherine and how she was the most wonderful thing in his life. He then explains that every year his family hosted a New Year's party. Tim was always shy around women and lacked self-confidence. However, the next morning, his life was about to change. His father tells him that it was time he told him about their family secret that his grandfather told his father. He then reveals to his son that the men in their family have the ability to travel back to any time in their life. He explains that they can only travel in their own life and cannot travel to a time before their birth. The boy thinks it's a joke and doesn't believe his father. However, he asks him that if it were true, then how has he never known this until now, and how can he travel to his past? The father then reveals that he needs to go to a dark place like a closet and clench his fingers while thinking of the time he wants to go back to. The boy still thinks it's a joke and leaves the room to try the trick and prove his father wrong. However, when he goes to his closet and follows his father's instructions, he is shocked to see that it actually worked, and he is brought back to the night of the party. He tries to remain calm and utilizes this opportunity to make up for the mistake that he made last time and kisses the girl who he previously was too shy to do so. He then goes back to the closet and travels back to his father again and asks him if his mom knows, to which the father replies, "No." Then he asks what his father does with his ability, and he replies that Tim's grandfather had the same desires which made his life worse and he was never happy. His father then explains that he should use his ability for the things that he really loves and that would make his life better. Tim then tells his father that the only thing he wants right now is a girlfriend. The scene cuts to the following summer where Tim meets Charlotte, who is the cousin of his sister's boyfriend. They come to stay with them for 2 months. One afternoon, Charlotte asks him to apply sunscreen on her back, but Tim acts desperate and makes a mess, so he goes back in time, and this time he acts more normal and does a good job. They spend the summer doing activities together, and Tim has still not overcome his shyness. On the last night of her stay, Tim goes to Charlotte's room and asks for her permission to ask her a question. But Charlotte cuts him off and tells him that Tim's sister asked her to be firm with Tim if he ever mentions love and tell him that he should treat her like his sister. Tim agrees that he was there to talk about love, but he is disappointed to hear that Charlotte thinks it is too late and that he shouldn't have waited until the last night to make his move. Tim heads back in time and conveys his love to Charlotte in the middle of their stay. However, Tim is disappointed when Charlotte replies that she would like to see how the rest of the summer goes and asks Tim to ask her out on her last night. He then goes back to the summer's end and waves goodbye to Charlotte after realizing that time travel cannot make her fall in love with him. The next day, he leaves for London, where he stays with his father's friend Harry, an arrogant and egoistic playwright. The next day, he goes to work at a law firm where he meets Rory. 6 months later, Tim is still alone with Harry. One night, hanging out with Rory, they go to a blind dating restaurant where they have dinner with 2 women in the dark, and Tim develops feelings for one of the girls, named Mary. Outside, Tim falls in love with her, asks for her number, and has a brief chat before they are interrupted by her friend, who asks them to leave. Tim heads home and learns that Harry's play went poorly due to one of his lead actors forgetting his lines. Tim decides to go back in time and make things right by asking the actor to rehearse, but he realizes he went to the wrong actor. He corrects his mistake by going back again and helping the right actor. Tim soon realizes that although he helped Harry, he missed his date and never actually met Mary. He goes looking for her at the restaurant but finds out she has already left. Tim remembers that Mary loves Kate Moss and heads to the art exhibition after seeing it in the newspaper. He waits for hours until Mary finally arrives. He approaches her, but Mary does not recognize him, and things get awkward. Mary leaves, but Tim approaches her again and convinces her that he is Kate Moss's #1 male fan. Over lunch, Tim learns about Mary's new boyfriend, Rupert. Tim inquires how they met and quickly goes back in time to the party where Rupert and Mary met. There, he finds Mary before Rupert and impresses her by mentioning Kate Moss and what he knows about her in the future. They go on a dinner date, have a great time, and kiss. Mary invites Tim over to her house, and they sleep together. Tim then goes back in time to relive the night a few times. Both of them are happy and live their life together. Mary's parents come for a visit, but everything goes well. One day, Tim encounters Charlotte and mistakenly assumes her girlfriend is gay. He goes back in time and fixes it as usual. Charlotte then takes Tim to dinner, and after he walks her home, she invites him into her apartment. Tim refuses and runs back to Mary. He asks Mary to marry him, and she accepts his proposal. They then visit Tim's family, spend the day drinking tea, and getting to know Mary. Tim plays table tennis with his father as he used to. At family dinner, Tim shares the news about the wedding and that they are having a baby. They get married, and Tim chooses Rory as his best man. Rory gives an embarrassing speech, so Tim goes back in time and gives the role to Harry, who is no better. Tim goes back in time again and decides to give the responsibility to his father. Tim and Mary have a child and are living a happy life. Tim realizes that he does not need to use his power, his life is good, and he does not need anything else to be happy. At their child's birthday, Tim is waiting for his sister to arrive when he learns from Jimmy, her boyfriend, that they had an argument and Catherine was drunk when she left for the party. He rushes to the hospital and finds his sister bruised, so he goes back in time and prevents the accident from happening. After realizing the state of his sister's relationship, Tim gets worried and feels the need to tell her to end it. However, he decides to tell her about his powers and takes her back in time to the New Year's party where she met Jimmy. Catherine makes things right by hitting Jimmy and ensuring they never get back together. They travel back to the present, and Catherine realizes she is now with Jay, Tim's best friend, and is happy. However, after returning to London, Tim realizes that changing the past has resulted in his daughter being replaced by a son. So, he goes back to his daughter's birthday and his sister's accident, restoring everything to how it was before. He is glad to hear that his sister is willing to move on with Jimmy and find someone new, so he suggests she date Jay. Tim goes on to have a second child and is living a good life again. He then gets the news that his father has cancer, so they go to his parents' house to visit him. Tim spends quality time with his father, who reveals to him the secret formula for happiness. His father tells him that he should just live his ordinary life like anyone else, and at the end of each day, he should travel back and relive the same day twice, once with all the tensions and the second time, noticing all the little things. We then move to the day Tim's father dies. Tim decides to go back in time and visit his father again. He returns to London, where Mary asks for a third child, but Tim knows that if he has another child, he won't be able to visit his father again, as it would alter the future. However, he decides to have a third child, and just before the child is born, he goes back to visit his father one more time. They play table tennis, and Tim lets his father win. His father realizes that they won't be able to meet again, and they both become emotional. They then decide to go back together to Tim's childhood and spend a good day at the beach for the last time. The movie ends by showing that after a few years, everything is back to normal. Catherine and Jay are now parents. Tim no longer travels back in time and enjoys every day as if it were his last.